Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our retrospective that we're calling Zombie Origins, and we finally made it to the 1960s with a British film, The Plague of the Zombies, from Hammer Studios. Author Bruce Wright in the book Nightwalker has called this the only movie about Haitian magic to be set in Cornwall. I mean, this is the one and only Hammer that we're talking about tonight. We are with Hammer Studios, and that's kind of exciting to finally make it to the 60s with that. So bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, Plague of the Zombies, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of The Iron Thane, an epic in the world of Shakespeare's Macbeth, available now in Kindle and paper. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director of Rooster Teeth Productions, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, and co-creator of the comics Psycom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Speaking of titles, I have to say, every time you say editor-in-chief, it just makes me happy.
It makes me happy to say it. I think that is fabulous. And man, you're putting up some neat stuff at HorrorMovies.net. I'm not trying to blow smoke. I really think it's cool. And it's going to get cooler. So it's so cool, but we're just stacking stuff in there, and I get to watch it, and it's awesome. All right. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Attorney all over again, I have to say, because you now, I don't know if the audience.
Twice.
Yeah, I mean, you were a Texas attorney for something like many years.
Still am.
And now, as of still are, but as of like Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday,
Cinco de Mayo, baby.
Colorado attorney. I mean, I had to go and take that damn test all over again. So congratulations. Yeah,
that taking the bar exam after 15 years of not taking the bar exam sucks.
Yes.
Not fun.
But
congratulations.
I mean, to not take it for 15 years and then pass it is kind of crazy. So that's pretty great. So welcome. Okay. According to Wikipedia, The Plague of the Zombies is a 1966 Hammer film directed by John Gilling. It stars Andre Morell, John Carson, Jacqueline Pierce, Brooke Williams, and the beloved Michael Ripper. All right. So this is Plague of the Zombies. We are in the 60s. Let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, I think you actually own this movie. So lay it on us. What are your opening thoughts, Plague of the Zombies?
This is actually one of my favorite zombie movies because it's so different from every other zombie movie, you know, particularly because it is Hammer. It is done in the Hammer style. It's set in Victorian England. It's just got that classic Hammer look. But at the same time, it's a zombie movie, and it has a lot of stuff that we actually associate with modern zombie movies, including the aspect of zombies as disease and as, you know, literally, it's in the title, a plague. The zombie makeup to me is still startling, and I will talk more about that when we get into it. I think that it's really effective. I think the lead is really cool, and this is effectively in some ways a detective movie as well. And this is a movie that's in a regular rotation. I pop it on like every few months, sometimes even just as background noise. But this is one of my favorite Hammer movies, and it's one of my favorite zombie movies.
That's outstanding. Julia, what are your thoughts here of Plague of the Zombies? Did it leave an impression on you, and what did you think?
Well, with the exception of that last part about being on rotation in my house, I have to agree with everything that Drew said, because I felt like it was very classic. I mean, I thought the makeup was great, the zombie makeup. I thought it was an interesting story with I love the sort of the Detective Poirot kind of thing going on.
Yes.
I mean, you know, there were some surprises. I didn't expect it to go a certain way, so I thought it was a really tight classic horror film.
Nice. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I like it. It's got all of the cool horror stuff that it should. And the hammer blood is in full effect, which is also great. Yeah, I like it. It's got a lot of weird stuff like that I hadn't expected. I don't think I'd seen this one before. So the way the zombies are and just how it all proceeds. Also, you have a typical Hammer thing where the lead is like an older dude. You have an older gentleman who's like that. Just it doesn't really happen these days in the same way, And I love that since he's Sir, has the title Sir. Whenever he asks for something, people just like, oh, well, this guy's asking. He's been knighted. We can't. Of course, like doors open. It's all very awesome and very British in all the ways it should be, and I dig it a lot.
Yeah, you're right. They completely defer everybody he runs into, no matter who they are, up and down the system. I think, I'm sure that it's a complete fantasy, but in the universe of this film, basically, the fact that he is Sir James means, people stay open late for him. They will totally listen to him. He can order them around. They treat him as something like a father in residence, and they will quit horsing around and speak to him. Yeah, there's this sort of God, I don't even know how to put it. There's a worship of the class system that I don't even think you see in Hammer that much. I think this one is especially that way. But what's funny about that? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Well, I think it's really interesting and it's kind of different. Because even if people are like really competent detectives or whatever, there's usually a like, what are you doing? Like, okay, you're famous or whatever. But hands down, this guy, A, everybody trusts that he knows his stuff, and B, kind of, he leads it in a major way. And that was really interesting to see. And I think it's kind of different from a lot of, he doesn't get any pushback. However, his daughter is, I was hoping would get zombified almost immediately. Man, annoying doesn't begin. But, I guess she's got to be that way.
Are you talking about her unusually high voice or
all of it. She starts out, at first she acts like a child. Like, which I guess you do if you kind of raised, super rich or whatever. But just all throughout, I was like, man, I really hope she falls victim soon. As soon as they got into the carriage and she's like asking inane things, and he's got the.
But you didn't want her to get dragged off by the fox hunters.
Oh no, man! That's all. When we get to that, that is, man, it's like a cult of frat boys, basically. Yeah. Oh man, that was not cool. Like that.
Yeah, well, that's really that's a really tense scene.
We'll definitely get to that. So, and I think that's well. Thank you for your opening thoughts. All right, I don't have much to add to that other than it is an unusual film. In many ways, it is very similar. It's of a piece with White Zombie. There's a lot going on here that's very similar to what was going on in White Zombie. And in a way, this is like a remake of White Zombie. Except that, like Tony said, it's a Hammer film, so it has, it has as its lead, this isn't true for all Hammer, but it's true here, it has as its lead an older character who everybody respects. It has a Peter Cushing kind of role. But it also has this sort of really, I completely counter to that. It has this class warfare storyline going on because the ultimate solution to the mystery is basically the exploitation of the working class by the ruling class, and that makes it kind of interesting that the movie is so so interested in respecting the authority of a beloved ruling class figure. And I guess there's an idea that if you're going to be so lucky as to be one of those guys, you have to be pure of heart and not an exploiter, I guess. Anyway, we will get into it. So, first off, we should talk about this film takes place in Cornwall in the 1860s. And basically what's happened is this doctor and his daughter, who live in London, have gotten a letter from an old friend who's of the doctor, and the daughter is the wife and the daughter are friends. Basically saying, come on out to Cornwall, and because I'm having this terrible problem, and there's a health crisis abroad, and I'm trying to solve it. And that starts the mystery. Immediately, one big difference is that we're in the realm of Hammer Studios, and it was so strange to see this after weeks of black and white, to see the way that color, is handled. Is handled by Hammer. I mean, it's not like Eastman color like you would have in the United States. It's that weird poppy, super red, super blue, so-called deluxe color scheme that Hammer always brings. And Tony, you pointed out the blood. I swear to God, it's tempera paint, basically.
Yeah, it does look. It always looks like tempera paint.
I mean, and when we see the zombies, they are green. I mean, like watermelon green, basically, and it's really delightful. I suppose what I should do is just go straight to topics. Can we talk about what kind of zombies are in this movie, and are they Night of the Living Dead zombies, or are they what is a zombie in the universe of this film, and how does one become one?
Well,
you want to go after it? Yeah.
There's still, voodoo in play, but they've completely like in White Zombie and I Walk with the Zombie, there's some ambiguity of whether or not you were actually undead. There was some debate there. There's none of that here. These are the Walking Dead, and they are completely, these are the most elaborate zombie makeup we've seen so far. So they're very ghoulish looking.
Yeah.
And again, as I said in my opening thoughts, there's this idea that this is a pestilence, it's a disease, it's an illness as well. So like these are sort of the proto, Night of the Living Dead zombies. These are like the precursor, the most direct precursor that we've seen along this journey towards Night of the Living Dead, because these are about as close to the Romero zombies as we've had, and yet they're not on screen that much. So I don't know.
Well, the first time you see one is when and we'll just take this movie sort of out of order. The first time you see one is when you discover that Alice, the character Alice, has died, and this, just out of nowhere, this zombie appears holding Alice's body, the body of this girl that we've kind of come to like. So this movie's playing dangerous, because now a character that we liked is just dead in the zombie's arms, and he just tosses her down a hill.
And that because we haven't seen any monsters at all at that point.
Yeah.
That's really, it's still, like, as many times as I've seen this movie, that scene is still very startling. And the way that the zombie looks is horrid.
Yeah.
And as you said, especially after last week's movie, where the zombies are basically wearing almost no makeup at all, but they go to this, which they're really quite horrid.
Yeah.
Is a huge change.
In last week's movies, the zombies are revenants who have come back, and they are, like Tony said, they're mystical. They have one goal, which is to guard the treasure. In this one, the zombies are menacing, but they are really workers. Basically they have been recreated by this evil lord. He has a sugar mill, a tin mill. He can't get anybody to work it because it was dangerous, probably because of poison gases and collapses and maimings and various other things that have gone wrong. He can't get anybody to work it, and so consequently he is raising the dead to be zombies. But beyond that, because it requires, it's not purely scientific, so because it requires Haitian voodoo, he has to, tell me if I've got this correct.
So this is what, is crazy. So talk about class warfare and classism. Yeah. This guy has brought in Haitian voodoo guys.
Yes.
To, when they're not half-naked drumming in, their traditional voodoo garb, I suppose, or the hammer equivalent of what amounts to that, what we think Haitian voodoo drum garb would be, they're his servants with the whole white gloves and everything.
Yes.
And
that's right.
So he and his frat boy,
yeah.
So he and his frat boy cultists run the black magic show.
Yeah.
With these guys drumming, because you got to have these guys, because they probably taught him all the stuff. So he's brought them and to be his servants.
The funny thing is about that, they wouldn't call it that back in the 60s, but what we're seeing here is actually a form of racial appropriation, in the most literal form. He has stolen their culture and appropriated it for his nefarious means, which is essentially enslaving the poor people of this town.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they're and the servants, so he's got kind of everything up until Sir James comes. He's got everything kind of under lock. They just kind of run rampant too,
Yeah.
So he's a pretty scary villain.
Before we talk about them running rampant, I just want to make sure I have the process understood. Because next I want Tony, you can tell us about these ugly frat boy guys. But so the way the voodoo works, if I understand it correctly, this guy's I need X number of zombies to work my tin mine, right? And so it seems like he targets people, because this is what he does with Sylvia, who is our main girl. He targets people, and he has to collect some blood from you, and then do all the voodoo.
And he's got magic blood collection methods, because he just pricks your finger and he gets a whole shot glass full of blood.
That's right. That's
when you got the power of voodoo, who do you do? He can do that.
Yep.
Yeah, your blood turns into red tempera paint and it flows like sherry. And we see him at one point collecting the blood into a little sherry glass. And he then goes and he does his ritual, and he has to make a little doll. He has to make a little effigy of you that then...
he has to wear his weird mask.
He has to, he wears the ceremonial mask. I don't know if he has to do that.
Well, that's for fun. That's when he is. All of that stuff is him and his buddies getting together.
That mask is awesome, by the way. So then when you die, which you eventually die after having been molested in this way, you die, and then you are raised as one of his zombies. So this is actually not easy. This isn't just he says some magic words and you die and he comes back. It's a whole thing involving making a little doll of you and dripping your blood on it and so on and so forth.
Well, and then you die of almost this, flu or whatever. You don't just die immediately. You slowly die.
It's horrible. Yeah.
Well, they kind of allude to the fact that he kind of drains you as you're going along. It's not just a slow death, but he's controlling people and doing stuff that basically they can't sleep, they can't.
It's more like a vampire thing.
Yeah.
It's more how vampires will just come and Dracula or whatever will just come and take a little bit of blood every night until the...
This is extremely Dracula-y.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very... There's like a heavy handprint of Hammer's Dracula.
Yeah, it is Hammer. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Well, and it was even shown in a double feature with Dracula when it came out.
Oh, really? Which Dracula was that?
It was, let me see, I saw it on the thing.
Taste of Blood?
It said Dracula, Prince of Darkness. Originally shown in London in a double billing with Dracula, Prince of Darkness.
Of course. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, I mean, and that totally, completely makes sense. Because, yeah, the whole notion of Jacqueline is kind of under the spell of the guy, and she's Jacqueline Pierce, who's Sylvia, is hiding that she's under the spell of Squire Hamilton, and all of that is very, very in keeping with the Hammer Dracula. And if Hammer Dracula didn't exist, the plot of this thing would probably run, slightly differently. Having said that, because there are no vampires, it plays out as a mystery. Although, I was talking about Nightwalkers earlier. Although it's really good, Bruce Wright really liked this movie. He was like, there is no mystery to this mystery. Everything that there is to know, like the moment anybody says it. Like Squire Hamilton is a jackass, and also he spent some time in Haiti. Plus they showed us Voodoo at the beginning. There's no real mystery as to what exactly is going on here. But Tony, tell us about the menacing crew that Squire Hamilton has.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a bunch of rich frat guys, which I go back to the rich preppy guys who used to. I could imagine these guys being the same guys who wanted to beat up my friends and I when we were in school, right. And so they trap Sir James' daughter, and bring her back to this mansion and just menace her, and you really get the impression if there hadn't been an intervention, some really bad stuff would have gone down.
There's a complete suggestion. These guys are completely capable of a gang rape. You know it.
Yeah.
There is nothing that would stop these guys.
Well, also they already they have everything under lock. So they're like, hey, there's this pretty girl. We're just jerks. This is the thing that's going to happen. We're not fox hunting or creating new zombies. This is the kind of stuff that we get down on.
Yeah.
And it's really that scene is really intense. And really, you're just like, man, can somebody just come in and just punch all these people or set them on fire or whatever you need to do?
It's a very clever idea to have the bad guys be recognized as a bunch of douchebags in red jackets and their fox hunting costumes.
Thugs. Rich thugs.
Well, and you didn't mention how they're introduced. They're introduced because, or did you?
No.
No, they're introduced because she sees them, Sylvia sees them chasing a fox, and she feels sorry for the fox, so she tells them that the fox went the other way, and they ride into a funeral procession and manage to knock the coffin off the bridge so it falls open but on the, ditch below.
Oh, and it's a child. And they're like, you really should keep your funeral procession away from our fox hunting.
No, they're just mad
generally
for sending them the wrong way.
Yeah, but this.
But they're like, they're not like, oh man, our bad. We knocked the coffin over. They're like, villagers, you guys suck. We're obviously better than you, so you should really keep all of your business that you do. You should really keep it away from when we're around being important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, man, these guys. And
you don't see them in these red jackets through the rest of it, but I gotta say, the red jackets are so emblematic that the movie would have been wise to just keep these guys in their red jackets forever.
Well, also, I mean, that's in America. I mean, we've obviously seen all of that, but it's going to mean a different. If you're from Great Britain, you're gonna. There's a cultural, probably even a bigger cultural significance to all of that. The ruling class and the fox hunters and everything like that is going to be. We're seeing it through the lens of we could say the douchebags, but it's a different thing. We know it because we're informed and we've seen enough of this. But like I can imagine you have a different impression, you know, if you're seeing this in, you know, in Great Britain as opposed
Absolutely.
to in America.
Well, the other thing about the red coats too is, you know, there's so much blood play in this movie. So like the color red on the coats, and I have no doubt that was probably deliberate. But like that's, you know, it ties together so nicely, and these guys just seem so predatory from frame one. And then when Hamilton comes in, you know, the first time we actually see Hamilton, he's actually sort of the savior, because he's basically what stops these guys from raping her, and he completely dominates these guys.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he is very Christopher Lee. He has that physicality of Christopher Lee's Dracula. He just slaps the guy down, but he's barely looking at him, which is something I always remember. Like, it's like the guy, you know, he's so thoroughly the master of this guy that he walks right up to him. He barely has his head turned, and he just smashes him aside. Yeah. And those guys are great henchmen in the fact that they seem so evil. He's a really magnetic villain.
Yeah. This actor is named John Carson. The funny thing is, listening to him, he and somebody else remarks this, his voice sounds like James Mason to me. Every time I'm listening to him, if I close my eyes, he sounds to me like James Mason. And I don't know if they were from the same place. Well, John Carson was technically from Sri Lanka, weirdly enough, but I'm sure that he was, you know, he was probably living with a British family. You know, his family probably just happened to be in Sri Lanka, but he has that James Mason voice, and you know, you could imagine, you know, he could dub James Mason just as well. I don't know him. It looks like he was in a hell of a lot of TV.
He's also in Captain Kronos.
He's in Captain Kronos. He's in Taste the Blood of Dracula. What did he do in Captain Kronos? Do you recall?
He was Kronos' military buddy that calls them into the town to kick vampire out. He's a little older, so he looks a little different. His face is a lot fuller, but like he. You know, he's good. He's very good in that as well.
Only 8 years later, Kronos in this film. Very cool. Yeah. So, all right. So we talked a little bit about the nature of the zombies here. So one thing that is not here yet. I mean, for instance, zombies will swarm. There's a point towards the end when they go when the mystery has led them to the silver mine to try to rescue Sylvia, and they know that there are zombies around. The zombies will swarm. There's a moment when Alice, who is our friend, is the Lucy character, basically. This is a plot lifted straight from Dracula. Lucy rises up, and this is very, very zombie-like, because she's turned, although it's also very, very Dracula-ish, she's turned sort of greenish blue, and she just rises and stalks towards them, and they kill her by striking off her head with an axe, which is pretty great.
Pretty gruesome.
Yeah. No, it is. It really is, and it's very scary. I mean, and the funny thing is, they do a really good bit of suspense when they open up her coffin and they look at her. They take a really, really, really long time. I mean, it's almost a full minute of screen time before she opens her eyes.
Well, she also kind of gets decayed slightly. Like, I see this effect where she slowly, since they've opened the coffin, like, make her decay and age, and then she opens her eyes. It's a pretty cool effect.
Yeah, no, it is. That is really a scary moment. What they don't do, the zombies in this, you know, we are not yet to the point of zombies wanting to eat you. And that's making me wonder if the zombies being cannibalistic is something that is literally so Tony or Drew, tell me if the answer is definitely no. But is Corman going to invent the cannibal zombie? I mean, is that the last?
You mean Romero?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I apologize. Romero. Does Romero invent the cannibal zombie? Is that the last?
I think that starts with Night of the Living Dead, although he was ripping on the vampires in I Am Legend. So, and Romero was also drawing from the myth of the ghoul as well as zombies, and ghouls do eat people.
Yeah.
So,
no, that makes sense. And in fact, I think that he may have referred to those as ghouls instead of zombies. So that's do ghouls traditionally, if I think of such a thing as a traditional ghoul, does it goes and chews on people?
Ghouls do not eat the living; they eat the dead. But they live in graveyards and they dig up the dead and they eat them. But they're very much like zombies. They're very similar. And Hollywood and I guess by and large Romero. I mean, there may be another example of it, but they combine the two. And I do feel like these zombies certainly look like they have some nasty looking teeth. They look like they could take a bite out of you if they wanted to.
And maybe there's a suggestion that might happen. I mean, maybe that's it's never given voice in here at all. It's but something is menacing towards you. It's either going to, in the end, it's going to molest you in some form. It's going to tear you apart, or it's going to bite you, or it's going to whatever. So I think there's the possibility. Monsters bite you. These are monsters. So there's the great possibility that in the end, if they got
if they don't eat you, they'll throw you down a cliff or like a hill. Yeah. That's for sure.
Or rip you limb from limb, or
they're gonna. Yeah, they're gonna do things whatever jerkbag and his friends tell them to do. They probably have these are kind of probably like, oh man, the way these guys are, just to have them do stuff for spite. Oh, I had that guy stick his hand in the fire. That guy, look, I have him stab with a poker. This is really funny because they're just sadistic jerks that way.
The funny thing is about them decapitating the girl, though, that is veering. We're talking about how we're veering more into Romero land. This is, that is kind of closer to the good old-fashioned famous headshot that's used to kill zombies. And, this is apocalyptic as far as this town is concerned. Hamilton is basically destroying this town, one person at a time. This also syncs up nicely with all the Phantasm movies.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's like, he doesn't shrink them, but he sure does zombify them and make them work.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's very similar to the Tall Man. And it's going to come so fast after this. This is 1966. Phantasm, like 12 years later or so. So I apologize. I was thinking that was early 70s, but it is a good still, a little over a decade away.
So at one point, Jason was wondering if the safety pin was anachronistic, but it was actually invented in the 1800s. The safety pin. Yeah.
There's there's a point where they attach she's got a cut. The girl has a cut on her finger, and so I think Hamilton does it. They wrap a bandage around her finger, and he gets a little safety pin and clips it. And I was like, that safety pin looks really modern, but no, actually, they did in fact have safety pins.
I don't think Hammer was particularly concerned about that sort of thing. That given their love of beehive hairdos and many of their period pieces, I really don't think it was something they were overly concerned with one way or the other.
Can I mention though something really cool? This movie and The Reptile are two Hammer films filmed back to back oddly enough, both of them take place in Cornwall. So they're the Cornish classics of Hammer. They both are filmed at Bray Studios in Oakley Court. And so when you're watching...
Which we stayed at. Jason and I stayed at Oakley Court, not Bray Studios, but we stayed at Oakley Court.
Well, Bray is across the street. I mean,
yeah.
you know, so yeah, when you watch this, you get a few shots of Oakley Court. They've done it so that you can't quite recognize Oakley Court the way you can in some of the other movies. Like in this one, they film walking towards the castle from the back of Oakley Court. Basically, they film it from a particular perspective that you can get walking up from the river, but it's very cool. It's cool to see these same. I love this about Hammer, is that you just see the same buildings and the same like sets, and they have this whole sort of courtyard set that they use over and over again. That, you know, it's like seeing old friends in a way, seeing some of these same sets turn up.
And by the way, when he's doing the whole fastening thing, that's another way that he's really predatory. Like, he does save her, but you get only because he's like, hey, we can't just go around doing this again with classes kind of stuff. Hey, she's, you know, her dad's been knighted, and
yes.
You know, you can't do this anyway. Also, but when he wants to, he is more or less like, hey, you know, I'm kind of a big deal around here.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, okay. So then when he decides, like, oh, well, I guess she's not having any of this, is when he decides, well, I guess I'll zombify her, and then I can do whatever I want. Like, the guy is Class A predator no matter what. Even, he stops, you know, potential gang rape, but it's more self-serving than anything.
Oh, no, I don't think he's doing it because I don't actually think he's doing it because he's, like, this great guy. I think he's doing it because it fits his agenda.
Himself.
Well, and that's another
there's, you know, several things. It's, you know, again, goes back to class, which comes up a lot. It's also him, you know, if that came out, there's going to be people there, you know, at his door. Like, you can't get away with that. If it was a townsperson, he'd probably be like, yeah, whatever, guys, have fun. The living room.
Exactly.
I'm going to go back in the mine and, you know, tend to my zombies. But
well, that's a lot like in one of the vampire films that we did watch. What was the one with the twins? Not Lust for a Vampire, but one of the
Twins of Evil.
Twins of Evil, where they had, you know, the nobleman in the castle, and he basically, for entertainment, they tend to do their satanic psychosexual rituals with the local girls, but they have better sense than to do that with a local rich girl, an upper class girl, because that attracts the authorities. You know, and that sensibility is definitely. By the way, this other thing where the character is going to be assaulted in some way or another, in this case raped, but in other cases just attacked. Dracula is arresting people all the time when they're doing it in various movies. The one I can think of certainly in the book and in Count Dracula, and I think at least once in Dracula 1957, usually the man, you know, you have, he's come into the castle, Harker's come into the castle, or whoever it is, hot vampire is going to start attacking him. Dracula always comes in and interrupts things. Why? Because it's his castle, and he gets to determine who's going to get the best goods. And in this case, you know, Squire Hamilton is not going to let them assault this girl because he wants her for himself. For reasons, who knows why. I guess he just likes her high-pitched, lilting voice. I don't know. So, let's see. The dream sequence, which I think, Drew, you mentioned, Julia or Drew, do you want to describe what actually happens in this dream sequence? Because I know we didn't.
I'll let Drew do it since he loves that.
Lay it on us, man.
Well, you know, it's almost immediately after the decapitation scene that we were just talking about, and the younger of the two heroes, the young town doctor, is kind of freaking out, and suddenly there's all this mist starts coming into the cemetery, and all these hands start coming up from out of the ground, and from behind headstones, and people start coming out of their graves, and we see all these. This is the most, with the exception of the very end of the film, this is the most zombies we see at one point, and it's crazy how modern this this could be a scene out of a modern zombie movie, or at least something from like the 80s, like Return of the Living Dead or something like that, where we literally have zombies like climbing out of
it
the
felt
dirt.
very Return of the Living Dead to me too.
It did.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how this one little scene, and it's even just a dream sequence, and there's reverberations of it through zombie movies. Like a couple of years ago, there was a horror comedy that came out called Dance of the Dead, and there's a sequence in this where there's zombies literally launching themselves out of their graves and sprinting, which is sort of a perfect echo of this when filtered through 28 days later. So it's strange to see that this one particular sequence stuck around, but it is actually very effective and very creepy. And really, the fact that it's a dream sequence is the only thing that kind of undercuts it. Although I guess you can sort of forgive that because dream sequences weren't quite as cliche at this point. Although it still feels a little like it's the fact that the scene is so great is really the only reason why I don't quite go like, oh man, a dream sequence.
I mean, it doesn't bother me at all, this dream sequence, because in the end, this sequence is what people remember most about this film. So that you just sort of, so I agree with you, in the continuity of the film, this doesn't happen, viewing all of the zombies rising up for their graves. But, it could happen. It probably did happen. It just didn't all happen at once. So that doesn't bother me. It's very artistic, and I can totally dig it.
The scene itself is beautiful. The scene itself is beautiful, and as I said, influential.
Yeah, there's. I have to mention that actually this made me think of another dream sequence at exactly the same time, 1966. But there's an American film called The Chamber of Horrors that includes a dream sequence where the wax figures of a wax museum have come to life and are chasing after the main girl. And that was a very, very scary scene. And it's so cool because they're wax figures. So as the camera, in that case, the camera sort of swoops around these figures of wax as they, like Jack the Ripper and so forth, as they move towards the girl. It's fantastic stuff. Exactly the same year that you would have seen Plague of the Zombies. So two awesome horror dream sequences in the same sort of snazzy, poppy color. So I recommend digging up Chamber of Horrors, however the heck that might be possible. I think you can find it on Daily Motion at the very least. So,
the other scene that's really cool looking other than the dream one is the end sequence where all the zombies catch fire and they're just walking around and it's all these flaming zombies, which I think should be its own drink.
Well, the best,
you should have flaming zombie drinks. But anyway, it's really really interesting looking scene, really very intense.
The flaming zombies are scary, and I actually felt really worried for these stuntmen too, because they are on fire. I mean, they're all wearing these big cloaks, and you can tell that they're wearing protective eye gear, and thank God, because they've literally the notion is that if you set the effigy of the zombie on fire, so when Squire Hamilton makes you a zombie, it's like, I'm going to make Tony a zombie, then he has to have a little clay Tony in a tiny little coffin in his
Tony
desk.
would be a cool looking zombie.
Tony would be a cool zombie, and but he's got a little clay Tony in his desk. Well, if that thing gets destroyed or catches fire, then Tony catches fire.
Aww.
And so that's what that's actually what happens here is all the effigies are burning, and so therefore the zombies are wandering around slowly on fire, and that is a very exciting ending. Yeah.
Also, why the actual, like, why the zombie survival guide says, don't set these guys on fire. Like, don't set zombies on fire. You end up with a wall of fire.
Yes, absolutely. Because they'll keep coming. They'll just be on fire now. So you can hide somewhere. And then as they come close to you, even if they can't reach you, they will set whatever the hell it is that you're hiding in aflame accidentally. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a really, really good point. Max Brooks is full of wisdom, you know, and you gotta wonder, like, how the hell did he write? Did he just just sit around thinking, like, you know what else would suck? Setting zombies on fire.
I think he probably watched a lot of zombie movies.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense, too, because flesh actually takes a while to burn. And zombies, the big thing with fire is it's extremely painful and debilitating. But if you don't have any pain receptors, like, it takes a while for a person to melt, you know, to a point where there's nothing.
Well, and they don't breathe. They don't have to breathe.
Yeah,
so they
don't have to breathe. So you're all of that, and that's what makes
wearing
a wall of.
Yeah,
that's what makes a wall of zombies. I mean, and if they're decayed enough, you may end up with enough kind of tallowy substances in it, so you're now just a big zombie candle.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, that all of that is really a bad idea to set zombies on. Like Molotov cocktails in a Walking Dead situation is just like a super duper bad idea. Especially in this one, they're in a mine, so they're in an enclosed area with fire and zombies that have these cloaks on. All of this is really bad, but it makes for a great scene though. It's chaotic and really intense, and the makeup's really works really well, and it probably wasn't the least dangerous that you've ever seen.
Yeah. Can I just mention that set, the tin mine set, especially the part that's above ground in this sort of ruined above ground section of this mine with its wheel and all that stuff. That stuff looked real to me. That really, I know it wasn't. I know it was built for the film, and that way they were able to destroy it at the end. But this is a huge set, They've built this enormous, basically it's a churning wheel for I guess hauling things up from below and all of that. It feels very real and enormous and like it's a pain in the ass that this thing is here, and that's why the town hasn't gotten rid of it and so forth. It's that all looks really great. I should mention also before we wrap up that the girl who dies, Alice, the initial one who rises up as a zombie, her name is Jacqueline Pierce, and she actually featured on Doctor Who and I think at least one other Hammer film. So that's a name that I heard often. So I was pleased when that turned up. All right, I don't think there's anything else to cover here. So we should probably get our final thoughts and then our endorsements for the week. So the order that we went in, Drew, you were the one who owned it, and you started, and we should have you go first again. So final thoughts, Plague of the Zombies.
This was the movie I was looking forward to talking about the most out of all of these, because I feel like this is a zombie movie that is influential but is not maybe talked about as much because it's a Hammer movie and the setting is so different, and it's got that different flavor, but it's still got just about everything you'd want from a zombie movie aside from flesh eating. But I mean, we'll get plenty of that next week. And I just dig the hell out of this movie. I next to White Zombie, it's probably my favorite of the ones that we have done so far. I may like it even a little better than White Zombie. I don't know. That's a tough one. But I do really love this movie, and I was just stoked to talk about it.
Excellent. Oh, Jacqueline Pierce was the Reptile. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I forgot that. She's the lead of the Reptile. So these two movies that you can think of as double features. Jacqueline Pierce, who's the first zombie here, she's the lead of that movie. Anyway, thank you very much. Julia, final thoughts, Plague of the Zombies.
I mean, it's not a film that I'm probably going to remember having seen this time next year. But it's like I said, it's class. It feels very classic. It feels very neat, and like it's got all the pieces it's supposed to have, and it looks good and everything. There's nothing really that's gonna hook. I don't feel like there's a hook for me personally, but because the dream sequence, even that, I was like, that's kind of cool, but I don't think necessarily that it's going to be the thing that I flash back to a month from now. But I'm glad we watched it, and I think it definitely exemplifies sort of what we talk about when we talk about a classic zombie film, as far as I know, anyway.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really dig it. It's good to be back in Hammerland, and I think it does a lot of stuff that a lot of other movies don't, and that's always kind of cool when it comes off. The villains are super villainous. It's the transition between, I think it's a really good transition between the kind of classic voodoo zombies into what we'll be covering next. I think that's a good middle ground. Yeah, I like, with the exception of how annoying the girl is, I think I like that there's a lot of great, and, she does fine as an actress, but, man, that character just drives me up the wall. But I think everybody's really cool. There's some, cool detective work to it, and, yeah, I dug it a lot. I think it's got a lot of great bits as well. The makeup's cool. We've got temper paint blood, which we always have with Hammer. Yeah, I dig it a lot. I just wish it wasn't crazy expensive if you want to get a copy right now. Maybe there's a Hammer collection that has it that for cheaper, but when I was looking it up to say I wonder what it would take to get this and it was Amazon's gouging huge.
Well, that's because these movies will go, out of print or Amazon, will have the rights to certain. I mean, because Amazon will do print on demand on certain things, but only when they have, a license, or they'll work with Warner, but Warner will only have a license to certain numbers of the library. Or Anchor Bay will have it, but Anchor Bay maybe hasn't cut a new DVD for whatever film it is in 8 years. And so there's still DVDs out there, but they're now, coming up close to $100 because nobody wants to let theirs go. It's weird, and that's just the nature of trying.
Are you saying my DVD of this that I've now had for a long, long, long ass time might actually be valuable?
Yeah, look it up on Amazon, dude. That's
crazy for me to think about.
That's just what happens with these movies when they go out of print and nobody's printed one recently, and then the new one will come out.
I have a few movies like that too, and I'm kind of torn. And I even the Dark Tower game that Jason and I have played several times. I looked up how much they go on eBay, and I kind of want a new amp. And I'm like, man, I don't play Dark Tower very much, and I don't know if we've played it since we had game night at Jason and Julia's here in Austin. So I'm like, oh, man, I don't know.
I love that game. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I would be sad to get rid of it, but I also like really loud amps, so I don't know. But, yeah, if that's something you're thinking about, Drew, you should look on Amazon. And you, too, could be a gouger.
I don't know if I would sell it.
Yeah.
I like the movie too much.
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff like that, actually.
Well,
and Rain's always pointing out that, it's not worth that unless you're actually willing to sell it. It's worth nothing until you want to sell it. You have to make that commitment. Then it's worth whatever money,
Well, what I was saying was...
funny, I have a limited edition Rocketeer statue that is worth a lot of money, but then I tried to sell it locally to some local comic book stores, and none of them wanted more than $50. So ultimately,
you have to do eBay or Amazon.
Ultimately everything's worth what you'll pay for it.
Yeah, well, yeah. What you'll take for it is actually, that's the worth.
Try eBay.
Yeah, but
I think since I'm actually kind of glad nobody took it, because now I've since kind of decided that I want to keep it. But
We used to have an Ultraman statue at I think it was North Cross Mall in Dallas. This Ultraman sat outside of this collector place for decades, maybe not decades. And then one day, Ultraman disappeared. And it always made me so sad because this is like a 4-foot-tall Ultraman. Heavy is, I mean, can you imagine how hard it was to steal a metal Ultraman? Nevertheless, he is gone.
I hope he grew and stomped on them like real Ultraman. That's what I hope. In my world, they took him home. He realized he was stolen. He grew to Ultraman size and stomped those people. These are the worst.
I agree with you completely. These are the worst, man. I mean, absolutely. All right. We should my final thoughts, I have nothing else to add. Everybody hit it really well. I cannot wait to get to next week. I'm a big fan of Hammer, though, and I always enjoy popping them in and watching them. But, ultimately I kind of feel like what's really worth watching here is probably the dream sequence, and you could almost watch that as just a highlight of this film, and skip to the rest. But it's a good one to play like while I'm working or
it'd be awesome behind a band.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, because the colors are gorgeous. There's so much green in this movie. I mean, it is really, really good looking. So, and by the way, great to see Michael Ripper, who's sort of this fantastic guy who shows up in practically every Hammer film, and he switches role to role to role. He'll be the innkeeper. He'll be the barkeep.
This movie's a constable.
Yeah, and he's the constable. He's just sort of a reliable mainstay, and it's so delightful to see him. And that's just one of in Hammer Heaven, Michael Ripper is always there.
It's funny. Okay. I did a Halloween Man story where I have talking robot gravediggers in like top hats and cloaks. And I totally, when I was writing the quote unquote older gravedigger robot, the whole time I was imagining Michael Ripper. Like if this was like somehow animated, Michael Ripper's voice would be the one going out of that.
Yeah, he was so fabulous. All right, let's get our endorsements. Whatever you got going on that you've been thinking about or want to point people to. So, Drew, did you have anything for us this week?
I'm about 99% sure that so many people are praising this movie. It's probably got to the obnoxious level, but I caught Captain America: Civil War over the weekend, and it's really, really good. It's got, it's funny how they were able to balance a very large ensemble cast with a lot of characters, with a lot of different motivations, and still kind of keep the Captain America story that's been going through all these various different Marvel movies. They very much still kept that on point. Like that still plays out really well, and yet nothing feels very forced. I feel like they finally got Hawkeye right, which made me really happy because I'm a Hawkeye fan. They nailed Spider-Man. They did, a really good job of Black Panther. I feel like that the way Tony Stark is portrayed in this is actually an improvement on the way Tony Stark is in the comic book version of Civil War. And, I'm just going to go say, because I feel like he doesn't get enough praise, even though he's been solidly playing this character through a ton of movies now. Chris Evans continues to be really, really, really great as Captain America, who is my favorite member of the Avengers. And I know he's only got a few movies left on his contract. I will be really sad to see him go when he's no longer in these movies, because I just think he's great in the title role here. But it's a really fun movie. It's got a lot of great stuff. If you're a Marvel Comics fan, if you're just a fan of the movies, you'll still get a lot out of it. And this is a lot of people are saying that it's the Empire Strikes back of Marvel movies, and I can totally see why people are saying that. So I'm very interested to see where they're going to go from here.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm team Iron Man, unfortunately, but I thought that you're saying you're team Cap.
Man.
No.
Again,
actually,
don't sacrifice security, liberty for security. Bad idea.
What I think though is like, unlike in the comics, which I feel like was very solidly team, like Captain America was right and Iron Man was wrong. I feel like they made a good argument for both sides in this, and I will say like I like Captain America more than Iron Man, but like I could see where both guys were coming from.
No, I agree. And the thing is, I knew going in that I was going to be conflicted on this film because of the fact that Iron Man was going to take the position that he has to take. But I've always been a fan of Iron Man. I love Robert Downey Jr. and everything about the movie.
That's another discussion we had. I got to see Harry hosted a cool news screening, and I got to see it, which I'm going to go back. So I guess for all of our endorsements, sounds like it's this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need to go back and watch it just because it was that good. But yeah, some other people were like, oh, we're team Iron Man, but mainly because we just like Iron Man and we like Robert Downey Jr. But his fans,
I posted on Jennifer's thing that I was going to be conflicted because I was going to have my own internal civil war because the Iron Man fan in me and the progressive in me were going to have it out.
Also,
the funny thing, I think the funniest thing I heard about this movie is, Jamie's not a comic book person, so when she heard Captain America: Civil War the first time, she had imagined that there was a time travel plot where Captain America went back in time and fought the Confederacy.
Well, actually, Drew, we watched it at the Alamo here in Denver, and they showed I don't know if they showed it at your guys' Alamo, but they had a little like Civil War style documentary thing about this movie, but like with the whole voiced as if it was about the actual Civil War. It was so funny.
That's pretty good.
It was the best. I loved it.
I have to say, I think the fact that they tied in the Winter Soldier stuff really did a good job of also adding a personal edge. I don't know, just like I know this is almost sacrilegious to say, but I think this was an improvement on the comic that they were adapting.
Yeah, I had several people say that. Also, what I liked was I talked about it, a link to a few friends, where if you like comic book movies, it's a great comic book movie. If you have read the comics, it rewards you for having read the comics. The relationship building between like Vision
and you don't care about comics, it's still a great movie. Like that's what I'm saying.
It rewards you if you know more. Like the relationship building between like Vision and Scarlet Witch, that stuff's great. Like, and if you read the comics, you know like what's going on. That's awesome. Wakanda. I had a friend who's like, yeah, I didn't know what that was, but the comic book he was like, oh man, this is awesome. Black Panther kills it. Oh man. It's really great. Yeah, I don't know. I think that sounds like that's all our endorsements. If I think of something else, I'll have to post it. But
I haven't had time to watch to watch it. Well, actually, I do have one more, but I'll wait until we're done talking.
But I just wanted to say one more thing though, is that for me as a non-comic book fan, I'm my thing is relationships. I love analyzing relationships and how people relate to each other. And for me, I mean, the reason I love Iron Man is because I'm completely drawn to narcissistic personalities. And so for me, it's like I find him fascinating. I find it really, really interesting.
You did marry the person whose vein is the day is long.
Yeah, this is why we've been married for 23 years.
So what you're saying is that Jason is Tony Stark.
Yes, Jason is Tony Stark. Except that instead of creating robots. He creates, a novelty comic book.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say was I just thought the the kind of the war between, not the Civil War, but the personal friend war between Captain America and Iron Man was just so poignant and heartbreaking. I mean, it did a lot for me, just on an emotional level.
Although I have to say, spoilers, Cap did win the actual fight because he's better than Iron Man.
See, it'll be really tough to imagine when Chris Evans is done, if they have to recast Steve Rogers, they're going to have to do some real work. I don't know.
They're going to have to find somebody that can be so ridiculously decent and yet so charismatic at the same, because they don't really build that, but he plays him in such an old school, old Hollywood kind of way, which is perfect for the character.
He's very
there aren't that many actors that can pull that off anymore.
But they are there because think about this. Chris Evans must have done a hell of a conversation or audition or something, because if you look at Chris Evans playing Johnny Storm, he played Johnny Storm as this smirky bastard, a totally different character. And
acting, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, but I mean that and therefore there is somebody out there who is probably just as charming and we just don't know who he is.
And I gotta do a shout out to Paul Rudd for the comic relief. He was awesome.
Yes,
man, it's hilarious.
Well, how about
Paul Rudd was a giant Ant-Man was also really all the characters are good. Despite the fact that there were so many characters, everybody got a nice little moment. Nobody got gypped. And, like I said, Hawkeye, who is one of my favorite Avengers in the cartoons and in the comics, has consistently, no pun intended, gotten the shaft in the movies. And
I miss Mark Ruffalo, though. I wish he'd been there. I know there wasn't really room for more characters.
Whatever side the Hulk would have won.
I'm going to call it, though, because we've probably been talking about Civil War for like 15 minutes, and I know that we'll be driving people crazy.
No, we will not. Henderson.
Go see it because it's spooky or something.
No. Totally. I like Drew's formulation that we can talk about anything that our fans would like.
Well, and it's not the main. This is the B plot of our.
Yeah. But I wanted to mention I watched Civil War and one other movie in the past week. So, and the other film I saw was Purple Rain at the Cine Family Silent Theater in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
And they played it with sound. It's an old silent theater. Really great place. This is a 501c3 theater, so they just show whatever the heck they wanted to. You can get a membership, and and your $25 a month or whatever it is just gets you into the screenings, which is pretty neat. It's like a museum that way. Anyway, Purple Rain. I had not watched Purple Rain since the 80s. It is so good. Some of the acting is clearly acting by musicians who have never acted before, but it's exciting. The music was fantastic. I had forgotten what a sort of just virtuosic physical actor Prince was. How he would dance, and how he was just really athletic. Jumping off of things and everything.
So get this: the take that's on the Purple Rain that's in the movie was recorded live, and then they did overdubs and some cuts. But a huge chunk of that, there's a YouTube video now. Sadly, Prince, when he was alive, was very, was not about
really
releasing stuff on the internet.
Videos.
So, but now, there's this flood, for better or worse. I think I'd heard this. If you watch this video, you're like, holy crap! How does this person pull all this off? Even though I'm not the biggest Prince fan, as far as there's a lot of pop music that I don't really dig.
Sure.
But it doesn't matter. He was amazing.
I wasn't the biggest
charisma,
Prince fan, but boy, this was great.
I gotta say, Prince, and maybe this is a slight age difference thing. I guess it's not, because Jamie was very upset about Bowie. Prince dying was a bigger deal to me than Bowie. Like I was upset about this for days. Like, I love Prince. I think he was. There were days where I'd be like, this guy was like the last real rock star, because like we don't have people that are like larger than life like that very much anymore. I think we got like Iggy Pop and Billy Idol, who are different than Prince, but still larger than life. Like, that may be who we have left. You know,
well, I also got to say, if you watch that movie, because we're a movie podcast, if you go back and watch Purple Rain, first of all, it's a way to get those videos that are constantly being pulled off YouTube. But, you know, beyond that, it's a good movie and a more daring movie than you might think, because Prince, who was the creative force behind this film, created a movie about a guy very much like himself, but who is a jackass and tends to be an asshole to people that he works with, and has to learn those lessons about not being a jerk to his guitarist, Wendy Melvoin, who I always had a crush on and didn't quite grasp that Wendy Melvoin was never going to go my way. And he lives with his parents, you know, and his dad is a drunk.
Well, it's a lot about overcoming, you know, the stuff given to you. You know, and the cycle of abuse, all of that stuff, man. I mean, the movie has its problematic parts, but I mean, it's
a good movie. You definitely should go back and watch Purple Rain. If you haven't watched it in 20 years, or if you're one of our young listeners and you've just simply never watched it, you got to check out Purple Rain. Honestly,
I will add an addendum. I take it from Drew as well. The documentary Twisted Effing Sister that's on YouTube, I mean Netflix, is awesome. Like, Rain was, grew up on Long Island, and there's this whole scene where you discover that, you know, Twisted Sister for a long time was making bank just in Long Island. Like, we picture them as this, you know, MTV superstars, but you learn a lot. I mean, it's one of the things also, like, where overnight success isn't overnight, you know. Like,
one of the things that I found fascinating.
It's a great documentary.
Sorry, Tony. One of the things that I found fascinating about it is how many people they went through before they get to the incarnation of Twisted Sister that we all know.
Okay.
You know, like, I never in a million years knew that there were singers in Twisted Sister other than Dee Snider. And, you know, it's a great little snapshot of a point in time, which is like New York in the 70s, but it actually would be good to watch, you know, alongside any documentaries on like punk or like hip hop from that same time period. But the other thing that I think is fascinating about it is, like, anybody, if you are a musician or you live with musicians or anything, you will find stuff about that that's actually relatable. And I think Tony would probably agree with me on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was two musicians, you know, like, watching it, and we were both like, oh, man. You know, to the fact, like, again, it goes back to MTV, told us, you know, like, Twisted Sister, oh, of course, they're huge, right? The amount of just obstacles to getting them signed alone is amazing. People who are selling out, you know, constant crowds, selling out decent venues in numbers that I've never encountered from just being a, you know, local band. And just how hard it is, like, no way, man, we're not, that's not a thing we do. Like, it's, I highly recommend that as well. But, I don't know. I guess Endorsements have been gone pretty long. So.
but this is good stuff. So the Twisted Effing Sister, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And definitely you should go rewatch Purple Rain. And obviously everybody in America must watch Civil War. It's part of our commitment as Americans.
That's right.
So, all right. Have a fantastic week. If you have anything that you want to talk to us about this show or about anything so far in this retrospective, lay it on us at our Castle of Horror Facebook page. Leave us reviews on iTunes. It helps people find the show. We are so excited that you are here, and next week is going to be one of the best episodes ever. We're going to talk about Night of the living effing dead, and it's going to be a good show. So thank you very much.
The living effing dead? Is that the pornographic version?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
Later.
Night.